Greetings all, Ben here from East West. Just going to take a weekly look at uranium. Before I do, I hope you all had a great break, a good Thanksgiving for those in North America. For the rest of you, well, we just enjoyed a bit of quiet time in the market. So with that said, I've taken this opportunity to perhaps streamline some of my analysis. I do understand that maybe 40 minutes of me rambling on is not exactly what you're looking for in terms of quick uranium analysis. So I'm just going to trial a new style here, a bit more rapid fire. I'm just going over a few things. So if you do like this sort of analysis better, then don't forget to hit the like, hit the subscribe, let me know in the comments, and I can certainly go for more of this style. So hopefully you get something out of it. Let's jump into it. Starting here with URA, and the weekly trend is still well in place and price is subsisting well above the cloud. This week's seen CQ span A rise up to $25.59 and CQ span B also rise to $23.85. Now that's widened the cloud out here by 8 cents, and that's bullish. This provides strengthening support in the future. This week's MACD has seen a rise from 155 last week up to 169 this week. Continuing on, we're still well away from our historical danger line, which is derived from the histogram, which is representation of the gap between the MACD line and the signal line. So no danger sign there just yet. The RSI this week's advanced from 71.39 up to 72.57, but we are still shy of our recent peak at 73.79. So whilst we are running hot, there is still some room to move. This week the ADX's line has moved up from 42.38 and it shows a strengthening trend up to $44.77. So everything's still nice and strong there on a weekly basis. The trend is still intact. On a daily basis, the cloud's been tested at the start of November, but the uptrend still remains in place. We have not broken through the top of this uptrend as yet. This week, for obvious reasons, seen much lighter volume. However, we have closed above the prior week's high, so that is nice and bullish, though this candle is not perfect. But again, with short and holiday trading, we have to take everything with a grain of salt. So just looking how the week finished out, we did close in the top half of the week's range, which is bullish. We did have some areas of interest down here, which will form some near-term support. And here we have a little area of resistance just peeking through that we'll look to try to close through next week. Obviously, another bullish, the best bullish sign would be to get above this week's high. URNM now, and on the weekly, we are still well entrenched in the uptrend and we are still well above the weekly cloud. This week has seen the CQ span A rise from 42.44 up to 42.93, and CQ span B has now moved away from its flat formation at 38.89 and moved up to 39.38. Now this rise in CQ span B would probably be the market beginning to encapsulate some of this rally. So the cloud, whilst it is stable, it is moving up, which is bullish. This week has seen the MACD line move from 3.5 up to 3.74. We are still a fair way away from the histogram's historical danger line, but we can see a strengthening going on here, which means that the MACD line is starting to accelerate away from the signal line. So everything remains bullish. RSI has risen from 72.36 last week up to 73.61 this week, but we are still short of our recent peak at 78.29. Now everything is still bullish, but in a word of caution, we are diverging with a high between this peak and this peak, so this bears watching in the future. The ADX line continues to show impressive strength, rising from 48.83 last week up to 51.68 this week in a very strong bull trend. There's nothing to suggest that this is turning around as yet. We continue to watch the weekly changes. Coming into the daily, and since testing the cloud in early November, we have maintained our uptrend, and that is still in place as we challenge the top of the trend line. Now obviously this week's volume has been somewhat subdued due to the holiday and shortened trading week. This week seems some good price action with a new weekly high above last week's high, and also a close above last week's high and a nice strong bullish stance. Now the volume this week, encapsulating last Friday, we've had a little bit of a battle zone here below 50% of the week's range, but we have closed above it. In fact, we're threatening the top percentile here, and we are well above the VWAP for the week. So this is still all nice and bullish, but we want to see obviously next week the top break, And it would be nice if this sort of area that of minor resistance become support with some testing of volume. Just looking at the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust now, and after we broke through the cloud and held the test back here in July, we've been in a very solid uptrend, and that remains intact, and we are well away from the weekly cloud. This week's seen Senku Span A rise slightly from $22.44 up to $22.53, and Senku Span B is also pushed up from $20.25 to $20.30. Now, last week's cloud was $2.19 wide. This week we've had a widening of $2.23, which represents growing support in the future. This week's seen the MACD line move from 216 up to 227 in a bullish move, but we do have to be a little bit careful here. We have already had a test above the historical danger line, and the histogram is beginning to suggest that the gap between the MACD and the signal line is narrowing. If we get a signal cross between the MACD and the signal line, that will warrant further attention. RSI this week's edged ever so slightly higher from 80.01 up to 80.41. We still do remain above the prior peak at 79.82, which dilutes the chance of divergence. However, we do have to be cautious. We are running extremely hot up here in the RSI, which isn't to say that price can't rise further, but we just have to be very, very cautious about the immediate future prospects of the Sprott Uranium Physical Trust to advance further. It may need a correction in the near future. The ADX remains super strong, having increased from last week at 45.15 up to 47.83 this week. So that remains a very strong trend in place on the week. We do have to be a little bit mindful of the positive directional movement index starting to move down somewhat, but we're in no danger of any sort of crossover between the negative directional movement index. So everything remains strong here. There's nothing to upset the apple cart. Just moving into the daily, and again, naturally, we've had a very low volume week due to the holiday. However, just looking at the structure of this, we never really even tested the cloud, which is a nice bullish sign. And then from this low, we had a very nice 50% pullback that we are still searching for our measured move target within the well-established trend channel that we are following. Unsurprisingly, we've had a much tighter range this week. However, we did make a new weekly high, but the market failed to close above the previous week's high, which in itself is not a massive issue due to the nature of how the market's been this week with shortened trading. But we have finished well. So we had a nice strong close today, even though obviously the volume was extremely light, but we did close in the top quartile of the week's range. We did defeat a little bit of selling that we saw here early, sort of Friday last week, early Monday this week. We did have a little bit of a range of support. You could probably change that to this for this week that we've held and broke through, but this close is nice and strong. So we would be looking for this zone to possibly become a bit of support next week, and obviously the tops of these candles will be something to look at. So that's how we sit with the physical trust for this week. That's just how I've produced this video, a bit shorter, a bit sharper. Like I said, if you like it sort of more in this style, hit the like and subscribe and leave comments in the comments section. Of course, I can do much more deep dives with lots of different angles on the analysis, but I just wanted to keep this short and sweet to test it out and see if there was some appetite for shorter analysis, in a word. So look out. I hope you enjoyed your holiday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.